All right, so I've kind of been charged with walking you guys through this first chapter a little bit to try to show you how we can maybe identify motifs, and we'll be talking more soon about how to use those motifs to get to meaning. Um, as a reminder, so a motif is just kind of a recurring narrative element that takes on symbolic significance. So it's something that comes up over and over and over again in what we're reading, and we start to recognize that it's imbued with meaning from the author, that there's kind of an intent behind its use and its recurring appearance within a text. So I'm going to kind of go through, we've read and kind of did some stuff together with the prologue, and so now I'm going to do a quick fly through chapter 1 and identify a few things. I went through and bolded a few stuff out because this is a PDF and I don't have my normal text in my hands. But as I'm walking through this, one of the first things that jumped out to me is he starts out here again saying, I am an invisible man. This is something that we definitely saw in the prologue as well. And, this whole concept of vision and blindness, it's something that we saw in the prologue. He's explicitly talking about it. I'm seeing the same thing here. So something that I'm kind of keeping track of, potentially want to keep watching for as I move forward. We get this introduction to the grandfather. I know later that comes up again. That's something I want to talk more about later too. But as I continue through here, okay, so he's been picked to deliver this speech. He delivered this speech at his high school. It was a triumph, he says, for the whole community. So he's been invited to come here and present it to a lot of the powerful people in town. And the fact that it's all these big shots in their tuxedos, just even if you don't know a whole lot about the text, what you do know about the text, you know that power is going to come into play here. So this whole concept of power, who holds power? Sometimes it might be literal. I'm reminded of like the monopolized light and power that we saw in the prologue. But we also see it here a little bit more figuratively with the power structure of who holds the power. And you'll notice that it's all the rich white guys. Okay. Pushing through here. Now we have a clarinet vibrating sensuously here. Music was such a big part in that prologue here. So I'm kind of noticing, okay, music's coming into town or coming into play here as well. That's interesting. Then we move into this really kind of uncomfortable description of this woman. We're going to be talking about that later. And then right back here again with the music. So music again playing an essential element. Look at the influence that it has on the woman with the dancing, and then the impact that has on all these powerful white men as they go. So I'm really noticing music is probably going to play an important role, potentially at least. It keeps referencing the music, right? The music is quickened now. It keeps building. There's all this stuff going on. All right, now, when she walks out the door, she's chased out the door, really, by these men. And now he's pushed into this ring. He finds out that he's going to be part of this fight. But first, they're blindfolded. And so, again, oh man, that was like the worst possible thing. Let me see if I can. All right, I'm back. Wrong keystroke combination there. But okay, so notice that he's blindfolded here. So again, this whole like concept of vision or blindness, and again we saw that over and over. The man who didn't see the narrator in that prologue too, right? And that kind of led to a violent encounter. And we see the same thing here. These things are put on. We see a blind terror, and then we see this really violent action happen. So he's blindfolded. He can no longer control his motions. I just pulled it apart here with all the warm blood and everything. Violence. Second time we've really seen that played out. That's something to keep an eye on as we're going through this section as well. We have a long, extended, graphic, violent section. Again, think about all the different ways he's trying to make us squirm and feel uncomfortable. The language that's being used. the effect that we see that it's having on these people, the way that they turn against one another for the entertainment of these white men. All of it, just crazy stuff happening here, really building, really building. Then they have all the money that they throw out on the rug. And as they go to get the money, they find out that the rug was electrified. Well, this immediately made me think of, in the prologue, we had the manipulated light and power. So earlier we talked about the power of the people there, the men who were in the room. Now we here see more of like a literal power, kind of like we did in the prologue. But interesting stuff that's coming up again, something to keep an eye on as we continue to read. So then, after the violence, after the humiliation, after being electrocuted, now he's supposed to deliver this speech. And so he delivers this speech, and I just highlighted this whole section here. All of this actually kind of parallels a famous speech by Booker T. Washington. If you guys are interested in that, you should look that up. But I'm marking oratory here. One of the really notable parts of the prologue, remember, was that kind of dream sequence of the church sermon, and it's really this kind of haunting image from the prologue. And now we have another kind of speech that's going on that's equally chaotic, but this one's in real life. So really interesting that we see that same type of thing happening here and paralleled in this other movement. Swallowing more blood, all this stuff. He finally gets his reward, this scholarship. He's pretty excited. That night he has a dream. So speaking of that dream sequence, right? I mentioned the dream from the prologue. Here we see it again. And this one is pretty intense. So keep this boy running, you know, the laughter of it, that it's all kind of this nefarious scheme. So very interesting. These are just some of the motifs we're going to be looking for, but I wanted to point a few out here, and you're going to be finding a bunch more as we continue to push through the book.